Welcome to the Rig Doctor podcast, where I'm giving out remedies to soothe your ailing tone and fix your sick pedal boards. I'm your host, Mason Marangella, aka the Rig Doctor. I've been building rigs for over a decade for many of the industry's top pros, and now I'm giving away all my secrets to DIYers just like you. I'm giving away all of my tips, tricks, resources, and easy hacks that I've learned over the years so you can build a pedal board just like a pro. If you want to support this podcast, you can do it in a bunch of different ways. Easiest way is to write us a review on iTunes, or you could follow us on social media, places like Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. You can also support us financially by purchasing one of my products, Vertex Effects, from any of our authorized dealers all around the world. Or you could become a member of our Patreon. We have several Patreon memberships as low as $4.99 a month that give you exclusive access to private live streams, Q&As, exclusive deals and discounts on Vertex products, as well as early access to new product releases. Also, you can get personalized one-on-one phone and email conversations with me, the Rig Doctor, to coach you through your next rig build. This could be as in-depth as troubleshooting a problem on your pedal board in real time with me, or some emails advising you on next steps, on certain pieces of gear to buy, and good stuff just like that. I don't want money, though, to be the reason that you can't engage with the Patreon side. So if you don't have the means to do it at this particular time, that's no problem. We actually offer a free version of our standard account at no charge if means are an issue. That means if you just send us an email requesting a free account, we grant 100% of those accounts, no charge whatsoever. We just trust that once things have changed for you and you can afford the $4.99 a month, you let us know. But until then, your account remains free. I also want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Blue Microphones. Kevin Walt at Blue Mics is just the man. He gave us everything. We have Yeti mics, we have boom arms, we have pop filters, we have everything that a podcaster would need, and we supremely appreciate that. Thank you to Blue Microphones. In this episode, I talk with my good friend, Ben Forehand. Ben is probably the best guitar player that nobody knows about. You can check him out on some of our videos. We did a prototype for the Songbird chorus that he played on, and he also is on a lot of the demonstrational videos for Port City Amplification. Just a monster player from rock to R&B to fusion, and is just a wealth of knowledge, and also just a great teacher. He's able to explain things in such a sophisticated way, but also a simple way at the same time. If I lived closer to Ben, I would certainly take guitar lessons from him. He is an incredible musician and an incredible teacher. These days, he's been playing with Tasha Cobbs and doing a lot of gospel stuff, but he's also been doing some Christian music with Jason Upton and others. But man, Ben can sound good in any genre and is so well versed. His teacher, in fact, was Jimmy Herring back when he was in college. So he has a lot of those sort of sensibilities, having learned from Jimmy Herring, and just has great tone, really understands tone. In fact, when I met Ben, he was working as the manager of a great guitar store in Atlanta called Boutique Guitar Exchange. And man, he not only carried our Vertex products, but really just had a great knowledge of everything under the sun, and has been involved in the boutique game for a long time. Got a claw on back when he was a kid in the 90s, has been on that boutique pedal train for a long time. So it's really cool to reminisce with him, talk gear, talk tone, talk approach, and really gives a really in-depth about a lot of these different subject matters. So without further delay, I bring you Benjamin Forehand. All right, and we're live. Benjamin Forehand. Ben is, in all honesty, Ben, you are my favorite guitar player. I want to steal all your licks, and you know you're just like the tastiest guy I know. You know, not just in terms of your guitar playing, but just all the choices that you make, your coffee choices, your food choices,
fishing shirts.
Your utilization of Crocs for their style over
and
their
function.
comfort. So, Ben, today the scope of the conversation that I'd like to have with you, just to kind of give you an overview, is I want to talk about gear, of course, and kind of your evolution and kind of where you've come to be now, because you've been in Axe Effects land before. You've worked at one of the best guitar shops, I'd say, in Atlanta during that period of time, and so you had a lot of experience with a lot of different stuff. You've owned some of the best stuff, and I think you also just have a good sort of barometer for what sounds good, combinations of things, amps, guitars, stuff like that. So I really want to get into that. I want to get into sort of your approach to creating melodies and sort of like the anti-soloing approach that you've kind of endorsed lately, and really like serving the song and what that looks like, and sort of how you sort of encapsulate that into your playing and into your thinking and approaching songs. And then also about like the importance on the teaching side of sort of drawing from influences maybe outside of the genre that you're most comfortable with, and maybe things that you recommend that people listen to or check out, and also gear recommendations. And so that's kind of the scope of what I want to talk about today.
All right, yeah. If you just leave me there and I'm supposed to address all of those things, we're just going to talk about Crocs, because I forgot.
I'll guide us through there. So if we do need to start with Crocs, it all started.
Well, they're just a highly functional and presentable, just overall presentation of the Croc is. I mean, I'm just floored by it. Its function. It's a very flexible shoe, but you don't sacrifice like your arch support.
How do you weigh them out against, say, Birkenstocks?
Oh, no comparison. No comparison. Like with the Croc, you have options. Like, do you want the strap on the front? Do you want it on the back? Are you going to utilize that or not? You could have one on, one off. I mean, it looks great with socks, with pants, with slacks, or just shorts,
The utility shoe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works great with the Vertex buttons. Like the button on the Ultraphonics is just it's really nice with the Croc.
Oh, you're talking about the foot switches.
Oh yeah, foot switches.
Yeah.
They're a performance leisure shoe.
A performance leisure shoe. Okay. Every touring act should be wearing Crocs.
Oh, at least one Croc.
At least one Croc on the one that's engaging foot switches.
Yeah.
So, Ben, I feel like I was trying to think back of when I first met you, and I think I met you over the phone when you were working at...
I needed some cables.
Yeah, Boutique Guitar Exchange,
right?
Yeah, you were talking about cables, and we got into this long conversation about the Belden 9778 and Evidence Audio. I can't remember what you were using at the time.
Oh, I was not using that. Can I say that? Can I say company names here? Is this friendly?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it's not a negative. It's just you were using this. It's not.
And this is videoed, right?
This is videoed.
Yeah, I was using these guys.
Oh, the Vovox.
Oh yeah, and I still do, and these are the same ones well over a decade later. The Vovox Sonorous.
Yeah.
I use them here at home for recording, not because they don't work live. I mean, I toured with them for years, Just don't want to ever have to replace them again. So, but yeah, I was using those guys. And at the time I had a friend, and this guy's totally worth checking out. His name's Eddie Wright. And me and Eddie were like in Atlanta at the time. We were probably in, Derek Scott also, but we were probably like the most extreme, picky people of gear, and this cable does this and this speaker cable. I mean, me and Eddie would spend hours like throwing cables back and forth of which foot does the 8-foot, sound better than the 12-foot, and what does it change? And then, let's change speaker cables, and let's change the actual speaker harnesses inside of the cabs, and which power cable makes. I mean, we would just sit and like take notes of what sounds the best and in what combinations. So I was always looking for whatever I thought made me most comfortable with my sound. And Eddie really liked the I'm blanking on the name, but it was like a yellow cable that seemed to have like a plastic coating around it.
Okay.
It was a very high-end cable. I think John Mayer was using them or something.
Like the Pete Cornish ones, or
no, I can't remember the name. It started with an A, maybe.
Analysis Plus?
Yes, he had that, and he liked that one the most. So for Eddie, when he played, he thought that cable was like the one. I was like the Vovox guy. Like I thought the Vovox Sonorous was the one that made me most comfortable. So it was always about when I'm playing, I just wanted to know that there's nothing I could have changed in my gear that would have made me more happy. And I wanted to enjoy my tone all night. Like on any gig, in any situation, I always wanted to be pleased with my tone. That way I didn't have to think about anything. I could just play. And I mean, I was doing way more improvisation back then. I was doing way more, I was taking way more solos. So it was more of an important thing for me then to not ever have to worry about gear, because I knew coming to the gig, I was completely satisfied. I'd done my research. I'd done my part to find the best for what I was hearing. That way I could just focus on playing music. So Derek Scott, who again, incredible player, great ears. He would, we were both big fans of several session guitar players in the 80s and 90s. And we would nerd out about what they're using and what they used on this record. And it came across, we started to see pedal boards that you were putting together. And then we were like looking at some of these options and like, well, how do we get a BC 108? And how do we get this? And eventually I think I just called and was like, hey, I got a store here in Atlanta. We sell high-end gear. I want to get some. And it was like, I wanted it on my board. I wanted it, and I didn't know how else to get it. So that's when I called you.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, girl.
It was much sexier than that.
I like them muscles. Why don't you get me some cables?
Yeah. That was really cool, and that kind of even after you had left Boutique Guitar Exchange, I know we certainly stayed in touch a lot, and I would see you in NAMM shows in the summer.
NAMBLA.
In Nashville, and it was cool to. And at that time, actually, when I first met you, you had a Tyler. You had a Tyler Burning Water, right?
Oh yeah,
that you got from Derek Scott.
No. I did have a Tyler Burning Water that I got from Derek Scott. It was actually one of the handmade Tylers from the 90s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, before he went to Machine. And that was a special guitar. I still have the pickup out of that thing, an actual Landau Secret pickup. But the Tyler I had when we met was just, it was a newer Burning Water, and that was also a great guitar. And I do think that I was using the Axe effects for reverb, chorus, delay. I had a pedal board, but I'm pretty sure I was using the Axe effects just for the effects part, the wet effects when we met. Because I know there was that like Eddie's Attic gig I did.
Yeah.
And you liked the tone.
Yeah, no, I think the tone was great at that Eddie's Attic gig. I remember it was great. And I don't think that the Axe effects is terrible. I mean, most of the guys that were that we revere, with like Michael Landau and Michael Thompson and guys like that sort
Uncle
of
Scott
created the sound of pop music in the 80s and 90s. Those were all digital delays and digital reverbs and stuff like that, not digital chorus.
Right.
But the Axe effects is a really easy way to get all of those effects in parallel,
well, I mean,
without
again,
having to have a
was
mixer
like,
and all that stuff.
This is like 8 years ago,
Yeah.
like I had originally gotten one from Fractal when I was touring with an artist, and my buddy Andy had a deal with him. So, I reached out, and a lot of people didn't. It wasn't a popular device back then. Like certain guys knew, but most people didn't. But I did have an actual rack prior to that. Like I had rack effects, and I was scaling that back, and I went to just a pedal board, and it was easier to travel with the pedal board. And then I realized like I wasn't happy with pedal reverbs and pedal delays the same. So I went back to a rack for a little while, which it's sitting right here beside me. And it's like, I can't believe I used to travel with this and a 100-watt head and a huge cab to every little gig I played. But
what was the 100-watt head you were using that back then?
Oh, it's right here. It's the Port City Pearl, and I still use it. It's had a lot of stuff done to it to make it more of what I like to hear, rather than like just a stock Pearl. But I mean, dude, everybody that hears it or plays it loves it. I love it. Brad Jetter, who's another Atlanta guy, and I trust his, like, if Brad called me tomorrow and was like, hey, you need to try this volume knob, it's going to change your life. This volume, I would do it. I'd buy 2. Like, Brad's just got those kind of ears. And he turned me on to these 5881s. And was just like, you need to put these in your 606 amps. And man, it's huge difference. I mean, so yeah, I used to travel with this big rig like everywhere. So when it went to Axe Effects, I was using it on the road because it was just so easy to move. Like I'm showing up, I'm flying into these dates, I plug in 2 XLRs and I'm good to go. But I got back into using it at home, and I realized I didn't have to use it as an amplifying machine, or I could just use the effects, and I could put it in my effects loop and just use it as effects. And then I got to where I realized with this 100-watt amp, I could just put it into the front of the amp and like treat it as kind of like my last pedal. Yeah. And I would just use it for reverbs, delays, and choruses. And I really, really, really enjoyed my sounds back then. They were very, in the same vein of Mike Landau and Mike Thompson and those guys. And that's the sound I liked. That's where I liked reverbs the best. That's where I liked delays the best. It just had the best sound to me, especially in those like Tyler Burning Water days. Yeah. So simplifying to just pedals was my next move, because there were some really good sounding pedals. I mean, around this same time, you're talking about like Strymon starting to happen. And when I saw how easy that was, and it'd be because I was still carrying a pedal board to shows, but instead of carrying a pedal board and a 2-space rack case for the Axe effects, I could just carry the pedal board. So that's when I got rid of that guy. And
was this the XFX 1 or 2 that you had?
It was the 2, and it was before the 2XL, so it was just like an Axe FX 2. But
yeah,
I mean, I still remember tone, and I remember that some of the cab sims and amp sims that I designed in that, I mean, I figured out ways to make it sound good. And I mean, it sounded great. Like it sounded really good. I recently was with my buddy Rhett at his house, and we were kind of digging through he had an Axe effects there, and I was just kind of showing him some of the stuff I used to do in these pages to make it sound more real.
Yeah.
And I think he was really excited at these changes that you can make to the internals to where it actually makes it sound more real. Where if this was a knob on an amp, you would never touch it. But it's a little change you can make inside the Axe effects, and it actually makes it so I'm saying you can get some really good sounds out of it. It's just not fun for me. What's fun for me is amplifiers, and I got to where it's fun for me to have pedals, and I'm probably going to get to a place one day where it's going to be fun to have rack stuff again, when I'm not moving it and carrying it. I mean, I'm getting older, so me at 27, I had a much different idea of what was needed for a gig than me at 37, where I don't need any of that for a gig. Give me a keyboard amp, I'm good.
Well, one of the things that you had talked to me about when we had seen each other last is that you were really kind of getting away from really doing soloing unless it was something that was dictated by the artist or something like that because of how they had made this arrangement of their song. And in particular, at the time you were touring with Tasha. Can you talk about why, or what you think the abbreviation of solos might be an important thing, as opposed to, just trying to find places where you can insert yourself? Because that's certainly I don't know if your view is that it's an evolution of sort of maturity as a guitar player, where you don't feel like you need to put your stamp in every place possible, or whether this is, a musicianship thing or a combination thereof. What's kind of, where do you weigh in on that?
Well, I mean, I think it's more nuanced than a direct answer, but I would say that...
Nuance me.
Yeah, it's maturity and security. When you realize you're good and you sound good and you enjoy hearing yourself play, then you're just looking at your chance to share that with other people. Yeah. And what's really going to make this song pop off is the way I'm going to build and develop my solo, that I'm soloing through a chorus, or maybe I'm soloing through a double chorus, or maybe I'm coming out of a bridge and I'm going to solo through the verse into a chorus. And it's just, I was on gigs like that where you're stacking the gig with your favorite musicians to play with, and you have little concern for what actually makes the artist sound better. Yeah. The artist is just thrilled that the band is killing. And in those environments that works. And I mean, man, I'm doing that stuff 5 days a week, 6 days a week. Your hands get in shape and you get to play all sorts of ideas. But in my mind then, I did think that it was oh, this is really going to change the song. This is going to change the night here. This solo that I'm about to play is, it's going to be the one. I can feel it. And I think it's just needing to be the loudest kid in the room versus the guy that's so confident he doesn't even need to say a word. and you know
Yep.
he's like the guy. And it's that element of security where I don't have a need to show you that I was here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be the protagonist in your story. I just want to be the guy who plays this role. And if I play my role right, you'll never even notice me. Like that, that became the desire. Like I didn't have the need anymore. So, I mean, like that one, because that was one of our first conversations. You were talking about that Eddie's Attic gig and the solo I played in this one song with a Sure Sheba drive.
Yeah.
But like that kind of solo, like it wasn't, I mean, it was heartfelt. At that place in my playing, it was, I would take a solo when the song needed one. And some songs need a solo, but I wouldn't try and drag it out longer than it needed to happen. But even the difference between there and now, I might would not even try. You know, I might would just encourage the singer to like vamp or maybe just sing through another chorus. Like we don't need a solo. So moving to the stuff with like Tasha, like, I mean, dude, some of the guys that I'm working with there, like, how important is your guitar solo when you're working out a song arrangement with Adam Blackstone? Like, is your guitar solo so life-changing that you're going to say, hey, Adam, I think we should put me in there instead? So I think that's like a reality of it is like, once you get to that place, you're probably the kind of musician that would prefer to not solo. Like,
Right.
and you're working with guys who understand song structure enough to where if they say you should, you just will. So
Right.
Tasha's music, there's never a guitar solo in anything. There are some moments where like there's guitar feels, like a drum feel. There's a guitar feel.
Right.
There are times in the live performance where it's not a solo, but people would call it that.
Yeah.
Where you're expressing yourself as outside of chords, like you're actually just you're playing, you know, and it's usually about creating energy or creating counter movement. That's how I see it. So people would be like, oh, you know, that thing you did at the end of this song. Well, in gospel, there's like a period at the end where the song just doesn't stop, where the singers are ecstatic and expressing themselves. And, you know, the drums are kind of holding some cymbals down. Bass and keys might be just like creating energy in a static place. And that's where, as a guitar, I can kind of match the vocals' energy. Whatever they're doing, I would then do. If they're holding a note, I might be moving. Or if they're moving, I just might be holding a note. And it's more about like creating counter melodies or just kind of keeping the energy up. And sometimes in those sections, it's just like hitting the chords. A lot of times the MD is calling like what he wants. So he'll call movements and you can tell you're going to hit him in this rhythm. And then when we're holding one, that'll be the spot. You know, with stuff like Jason Upton, and we just had that record come out, and I think if you listen to that, you'll hear what I'm talking about in the context of his music on the God Finds Us record. There's not really any solos, but there's a couple of interludes where I'll do something musical, but it's not a solo. It's just I'm working with the band and I'm filling my role or my position with their help.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. And on the internal, I just don't have the desire to be looked at special. It's not like, hey, look at me. This gig is about me being up here. That mentality is just kind of matured a little more into, man, I just want to play music with my friends. I want to make them sound really good. I want to make this song feel special. And it doesn't take a whole lot to do that. I mean, most of my favorite songs don't have guitar solos in them.
Mm.
You know? Like, no, I do have favorite guitar solos, but they're not always in my favorite songs. Like, my favorite songs are just good songs. There's a lot of times guitar in it, but the guitar isn't the featured instrument.
It's sort of interesting that how you've described, I mean, it sort of sounds like the session musician approach of any of the guys that we talked about, whether it's, Michael Landau or Michael Thompson or Dan Huff. Most of the session work that they did rarely ever had solos. I mean, maybe some small stuff that was like, kind of completing, like you said, an interlude or some sort of, bridge to the chorus or something like that, where it might have a few seconds where they, where the guitar is more isolated than the other instruments. But it is sort of the approach that a lot of those guys had. There's some of the best tones that I appreciate from those guys, whether it's, I don't know, doing a Celine Dion ballad or something like that has a lot of space and big clean chords, or whether it's Richard Marx or Michael Bolton. There's very little of, there's guitar solos to the degree that it was allowed during those generations to have guitar solos on the radio. But when that morphed away in the late 90s and 2000s, the tones are still there. It's just sort of
parts are changing.
Fits the need of the song. But what would you say are your, the songs that you, or your, let's say 5 of your favorite guitar solos and then 5 of your favorite songs with guitar on them that you use as sort of maybe touchstones or reference points for kind of like how you want to behave as a guitar player in a song?
So 5 favorite guitar solos.
And it doesn't need to be, 5 necessarily. Just like,
I'm just going to tell you like
a little
history of my life guitar solos.
A little sample.
Yeah, I think
the
like
ones
the
that you
first
use
thing
as
that I
references.
saw that like really impressed me was probably and there's the visual aspect too, which probably complicated my idea of what a guitar is supposed to do in a band. I remember watching Slash in the November Rain music video.
Yeah.
And when he's like out there and just with the cigarette, and like that's the day I decided, all right, I gotta play my guitar lower and I need to start smoking. Like it just sold me on, oh yeah, that's it. Dude, I was a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan, and I always like the Siamese Dream record. So like the guitar work there, like really did something for me melodically. I still think it's like really melodic guitar playing. I was a Weezer guy, so like again, I loved the guitar work. Pearl Jam, same thing. It was a little more like of the classic rock vibes in my book.
Yeah.
So that music in the late 80s, early 90s, that kind of hit me. And then I got into Eric Johnson, Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan. And those were like, I mean, it's not so much like pick a song, because I didn't listen to songs back then. I had tapes, and you just play the whole tape. And it was a lot of that. So like, yeah, Avia Musicom. I mean, I wore that thing out. Let's see, there was, I mean, the whole Stevie Ray Vaughan thing and the whole, I mean, that was probably, yeah, that was vital. Just the way that it felt, the touch, the tone, that thing, it left a huge mark. But while all of this is happening, there was also like my Uncle Luke. He was a huge Steely Dan guy, and other stuff like Joni Mitchell, Todd Rundgren, just other things. And he would be sliding me stuff, and I had no idea what I was listening to. He would just give me unmarked tapes, because my dad was really particular about what music I listened to. So my uncle would just like slide me some stuff. And so I was influenced by stuff I didn't even know I was influenced by. Like one day I found out Sean Lane was one of the session guys on this group, the Highwaymen. And I'd listen to the Highwaymen and loved the guitar stuff, having no idea it's Sean Lane. And I think there's so much of that, like stuff that I did listen to, not knowing who the musicians were, but I was impacted for years. Like Dan Huff and Paul Jackson Jr. Like I had no idea who those guys were until later in life I found out about them. Yeah. Then finding out all of this music I listened to growing up, they played on it. So there was so much of that kind of thing. So my context for what is appropriate in the song, it's usually not based on the stuff I indulged in as a guitarist. So I'm usually not like, oh man, this is like an Eric Johnson kind of part I'm going to put here. Or, oh yeah, I need a big Stevie, like strumming right hand, single note kind of thing. That's usually not what I'm putting. I'm usually like on a record, oh man, this part reminds me of this other thing that I can't name, but I definitely heard growing up. And I think it's just the period of music that I always draw from is that 80s, 90s session thing. And it's just in my mind, it's hard to separate that unless I have direct encouragement from a producer to get weird or like, hey, listen to this song. We want to do this. But if it's just me, I mean, it's probably going to be something in that like Steve Lukather, Dan Huff, Thompson Landau era. Like those are what I'm going to, if you leave me alone, I'm going after those tones.
Do you have any favorite songs that those guys played on that you really like?
Man, not really. It's just that whole era. Like I love it all. I mean, me and Derek Scott, we'd sit around and just like listen to stuff and talk about specific pieces of equipment that were used on specific records, and it's so much. Like it's like I don't have a favorite Steely Dan song. I don't have a favorite, I just really like it. I want to hear the whole thing. I like the band as a band and everything they ever did. And I think with those session guys, it's like, there's a solo Dan Huff takes, and I know we were talking about parts, and now I'm talking about solos, but if I had to pick something, he's playing, and again, this is like another example. My mom got me some instrumental Christmas album, when CDs were just becoming a thing.
Right.
And some of it I really didn't like, but there was these two songs I did like. And one of them was God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. And I remember listening to it over and over and over and over, and I could like sing you the solos. Later on, I find out that's like Giant. That was them, and they were on 2 of the songs, and the rest, it was a compilation album. And then I like, as a late teen adult, I go back and like, who are these guys? Dan Huff. Heard that name before. And it was like, there's a lot of those kind of examples of, I'd been listening to it, studying it for a long time, not knowing who he was or what else he had done. But man, he takes a solo in there that's like epic.
I remember you sending it to me, I don't know, maybe a year or 2 ago.
Oh, I'll dig it up every now and then. Like, oh man, I haven't listened to this. Another thing that I pull from is, and it's a little different, but when I'm thinking about vibe or feel for a part, I will listen to what Brecker did with Mike Stern on a song called Wingin' a Prayer.
Okay.
And it's a sax solo, and it just does something for me musically when I listen to it. And I think when I take that and I'm going to put it into a session, or I'm going to bring that with me it just reminds me, like, you don't have to play a lot. You just have to mean it. And there's another group that I actually remember sharing with you guys at the NAMM house one year.
Yeah.
And I don't tell a lot of people about it because it's kind of been like my secret sauce. But is this group called The Outsidemen, and they did a record called Band Overboard. And I mean, it's got like all the tones, all the parts, all the feel. And I love it, man. You know, I can sing you the whole record because I've listened to it so many hours of just on repeat, on repeat. I would say one of the bigger things that I notice in like the teaching aspect or in mentoring, I listen to records, the whole thing. You know, I grew up in the time where like, I had friends who were part of like what was that? It was like the BMI group or whatever, where you get hustled into the CD club.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Columbia had one.
Columbia, that was it. Yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
11 CDs for 10 cents or something.
Yeah.
But then they got you, and like they don't stop charging. But I didn't have that. Like my parents wouldn't let me do it. So when I got a CD, it was like, I mean, there's a chance I'm going to get disciplined if we find this CD in the house. So I was like taking a big risk, and I would listen to that thing non-stop all the way through. So as I got a new CD, it's the same thing. Like I'm going to listen to it non-stop all the way through. And I studied music that way. So I didn't like hear a song. I got the vibe of the record. This is what this record is saying. And I listen to things over and over and over and over. Nowadays, there's a lot of younger guys that like, and I'm not saying my way is right and their way is wrong. It's just that our way is different. Younger guys might listen to a record, but for the most part, they're jumping and skipping around to what's their favorite. And they might listen. It's like, did you have a tape player? Did you have an iPod? Did you have an iPod, or did you just use your phone? Like there's different like elements of how you receive things and what it means to you and how it shapes what you're going to do with it. So I think as far as like tones, feel, all of that, there's just a direct connection to the way that I received music and how it comes out. So I guess I might not be able to shift gears as easily as other guys who might have like grown up with playlists rather than records.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think about this stuff sometimes.
Well, I think the records, Jenna and I, my wife, went and got, we revived a turntable, an old, manual acoustic research turntable that her aunt gave to us. And, and sort of recollecting a lot of the records that we had in my house when I was a kid, and also just ones that I've come to like, as I've, come to know more music. And there really was like a concerted effort to sort of orchestrate the order of songs and the feel to have a specific outcome or emote something in the listener. And again, not right or wrong, just different. There is something about sort of the roller coaster that a record takes you on, and that presumably somebody was thinking about how, just like when you're writing a book, there's things that it's going to open the record with, and it's going to close the record with, and that this was by design. And in the era of singles, and stuff like that, everything is really is consumed in isolation. So there's not as much of an arc that you can have with a record or an experience. Like I was listening to something on NPR the other day, and it was like talking about, I mean, it wasn't the other day, but it was like sometime in the last year. I think it was some sort of anniversary of the Stevie Wonder Songs in the Key of Life album.
Ooh.
It's either two or four record. It's two records, 4 sides of the record. And, apparently like when people bought it in that day, that there would just be like people that would get together and listen to it to hear it all the way through. And it was such a kind of a unique experience of the things that were, how all the songs were ordered and the different energies and the styles and all the different songs, because that incorporated a lot of different styles and incorporated a lot of different musicians. There were some songs that didn't have any words on it at all. You know, it was just like almost like a fusion, like jazz sort of thing that was happening on certain songs. And it was interesting, the idea that you would get a group of people together in the mid 70s and you would just sit around and listen to a whole record all the way through, like you would, I don't know, a Game of Thrones party or something like that.
So with that, and yeah, I mean, we started about where did I start with guitar. We didn't talk about like Earth, Wind and Fire, Donny Hathaway, or like these other artists or bands that like completely turned my music upside down. But so my guitar teacher, when I moved to Atlanta, this dude, Jimmy Herring, Jimmy put me in contact with this guy that was dating, now married to his daughter, which, you know, it's Dwayne Trucks, and he played drums. And Jimmy wanted me to play guitar, and this other dude, Nick Johnson, who's like, man, Nick is incredible. He's in Atlanta. And then Dwayne, he wanted us to all like be in a band together. And so Dwayne, we would go hang out at Dwayne's house, and Dwayne's brother, who Derek Trucks, and Susan Tedeschi, at the time they weren't together as Tedeschi Trucks band. It was just Derek Trucks band, Susan Tedeschi. Her band lived with Dwayne. So they all lived in Decatur. There was this dude, Ted Pecchio, and Falcon. And I think Falcon still plays with Tedeschi Trucks, and Ted, I'm not sure who he plays with right now, but anyway, they all lived together, and it was just this very unique group of people, like, who were all heavily impacted by Colonel Bruce Hampton and the whole thing. And I mean, Ted and Falcon played for Hampton with Jimmy, and this is just this big network of everybody's friends. But that was our thing. We would go over to this house, and Ted and Falcon and or Dwayne or whoever. And I mean, dude, everybody's coming through. Like whenever someone's in town for a rehearsal, this is the house they come hang out at. And I mean, we just listened to records, and that was the event. And it was like, okay, tonight we're going to listen to this record 6 times, you know, like it was the thing, like, you know, we're going to smoke a little bit and listen to a record. And this is like, you know, man, over 15 years ago. And that thing of, it would be like, hey, come over for game night. We're going to watch this. Right. Or, oh yeah, right. You know, GOT's tonight, man, come on over. Right. It you know, it was come over. We're going to listen to, you know, this Zappa record tonight. We're really going to just like, I'm going to show you my favorite thing. Yeah. My favorite thing that Ruth does, or, you know, it was that. And Ted, between them, they had an incredible record collection. Like every record you want. All right, we're going to listen to Count Basie tonight. Right. All right, we're going to listen. And it was just that kind of time of, we would talk a little bit, but much like if you're having like a, you know, a Tiger King party or whatever it is, and you can bring your friends over. It was that. We wouldn't just sit and talk the whole time. We would actually like listen to this record, like trying to pull from it. And I mean, dude, those were like a lot of times when the record was over, we just kind of like, somebody would pick up an instrument. The next thing you know, like there's a jam going till 4 a.m. And in those contexts, there's no right, there's no wrong. I mean, dude, some weeks it's like Jeff Sipe would be there. And I mean, he's a drummer. I mean, he played for Aquarium Rescue Unit and all these other bands that I really liked back in the 90s and early 2000s. And here I am, and we're all hanging out together and playing. But there was no right, no wrong. It wasn't like, oh, you're not playing the part right. That was just like, hey, man, do you. which even in those days, there was this bass player named Kevin Scott, who was like one of my first friends in Atlanta. And Kevin was probably my Bruce Hampton. Like, Kevin was the guy that pushed me to, like, you know, just do your thing. And Kevin's like, he's played with everybody. Like, he's Wayne Krantz bass player. He's the guy.
Yeah, I think I met him at a NAMM show through you.
Well, dude, Kevin would have these jams on Tuesday night, and it was like, I lived in Atlanta at just the right time. Because it's not a thing like this anymore. But man, we had a scene, and we had these Tuesday nights at the 5 spot. And I'm not kidding you, man. It's like an all-night jam Kevin would host. He'd put together a house band, and a lot of times the rules were no songs allowed. Like, don't you dare play a song. And you've got, you know, an hour and a half set that you have to cover. And the only premise is you can't play a song, but you have to start it.
Right.
So it was just very stretching. And I bring all of that back into, like, I get hired to do a session now. And I know that they want 4 or 5 different guitar tracks. And they want them to work together. And I need to get some tones down. But it all it comes back to, like, all of these things are my influences. And even in a very simple part, you can still, like, I can still take you through why those nights at the Trucks house was, like, why it impacted the part you just heard. And the Tuesday nights that were at the 5 spot, you know, why that impacted what you just heard. And then like, it all makes sense to me. And it's all, like, listening, feeling, sharing. Because those were the things that, you know, with music that really affected me was the listening, receiving, and then sharing. And when I can take a song, a track, and I can receive and then share, like, I think I did my job.
So one of the other components to making great music, whether you're taking solos or you're kind of stepping back and kind of allowing the song to take its course, is the equipment that we use. And you know, as we've kind of gone through and touched a little bit on, you've had a lot of different equipment. You've been digital, you've been analog. I want to know about your favorite picks.
You want to know my tone secret?
Tone secret. Yeah. Thank you for that plug. I want to kind of go, like, category by category.
Okay.
And sort of get Benjamin Forehand's picks. What's you know, made it through the gauntlet over the years. So starting kind of at the beginning of the chain, what would you say is your favorite compressor?
Man, so I like the compressed sound. Like, I like the DBX 160 sound.
Yeah.
And let me actually refine that. I like the way that thing sounds on tracks that I liked with certain players.
Yeah.
Which may mean if I use it, it's not going to sound that way.
Yeah.
So because of that, I have a thing that I want it to do. And for me, this Mirage pedal built by Effects Engineering, it's the RAF Mirage.
Mm-hmm.
I played different compressors. I've had other stuff I really liked. I love the man, I'm blanking on who made it.
What does it look like?
Who made the Burn unit?
Barber.
Yeah, I loved the Barber
The tone
compressor.
press.
The tone
press.
Yeah, tone pump. Tone pump or tone press?
What was tone press?
All right. I loved that one. But I met these guys in North Carolina, and the guy wanted me to, like, have this pedal. Yeah. And I started playing it, and I was like, there's something on it. And I think for my style with my hands, it's the best. I noticed that it colors my tone the least. It does everything I want it to do. And yeah, that's the thing. And I've had it for years.
And it's 2 knobs, right? It's super simple.
There's an internal adjustment which controls like the dynamic of the attack. But externally, there's 2 knobs. I mean, it's basically like compression and volume.
Yeah, let's pull it up here just so people can see what we're talking about. Effects engineering. Now, do you have the hand wired?
Is this on their website?
This is on their website.
I look so retarded in that photo. Is that Bob?
Let's see. I didn't actually notice.
That was Bob.
What's that?
Bob.
Where was Bob?
Bob Lanzetti. Yeah, right there. Ain't that Bob?
Yeah.
Man, he makes that pedal sound good. That was me.
Mark Letarier.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of have the New Jersey dock workers look. Now it looks like there's a couple of different versions here. There's the Pro.
So he just had the RAF Mirage back then. Mine, I think one was hand wired and then one was PCB.
Yeah.
I remember he sent me some kind of chip that I put in.
Got it.
That was like supposed to make it less noisy or.
Yeah.
I don't actually remember. I remember I have the chip somewhere, but I just love it, man. Because a lot of compressors, you turn it on and it hisses. And this one doesn't really get hissy.
Right.
Yeah, I love that pedal, man. And let's see, there's a lot of guys that like it. I mean, like, dude, I think Landon has one and loves it, and I love the way his compresses.
It's on Tom Bukovac's board now as well.
What?
Yeah.
That pedal?
Yeah.
Well, there you have it.
There you have it, old man Bukovac. Yeah. What about kind of like low gain overdrive?
Jan Ray. Which is your fault. Like, you started that thing for me because you had modded one for a guy where he could control it with his volume pedal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
but
that started it all.
In that process, that's where, like, I was, like, needing to try this pedal. And, yeah, I remember meeting Masaki. That was his name, right?
Yeah, and I don't think he's there anymore.
But I met him, and I met Dea, but I remember they sent me a bunch of pedals, and I remember flipping out over this pedal. Like, because what I wanted that no pedal at the time could really do was emulate the sound of a breaking up blackface amp. So, there it is.
So yeah, this is
the OG, ain't it?
This is the Michael Landau signature thing that I did in collaboration with Vemoram, where essentially, when you plugged in this Roland EV5 into the Vemoram, it would take over for the volume pot. And then if you unplugged it, it would just work like a regular Jan Ray again.
But yeah, like that. And I remember at the time, like, there was people that were so hateful in the I don't play professionally, but I like to talk like I do community. Like the hateful community.
Yeah.
And they were just ripping these guys apart, saying it's the same thing as a Timmy or and I mean, I had those too, and they're just, it was such a different sound. Like, it was not the same. And we would sit and, like, I mean, I had blackface amps. Derek had blackface amps. We would get the blackface amps going, And then we had like the Jan Ray through my clean amp or through like a 2-rock or a Carol Ann or a red plate or something that we had in the shop that was clean.
Yeah.
And we would try and dial sounds in. And there were so many times where we could get it to where it sounded almost identical. Like that sounds the same as this amp on this. And that was the only pedal that I had ever found that actually fulfilled that part of my sound.
Yeah.
So this pedal has been on every iteration of my pedal board since. And I'm guessing that was maybe, I mean, we're not talking about that long, but it's definitely the oldest pedal on this board. Maybe got it in what, 2013?
Yeah, maybe even before that, 2012.
2012, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a pedal that like, that's a long time to be on my board.
Yeah, I remember introducing it to a bunch of people because, you know, they had. I guess I got hip to it from Michael Landau, and then they sent me one, and like I showed it to Matt Schofield, and then Matt Schofield started using it, and I showed one to Osnoy, and then Osnoy started using it, and yeah, that was a cool pedal for the time. Still is a cool pedal. Certainly, I think their best pedal that they've ever made.
No, I really liked the Ray G and the Karen. I only liked the Karen in conjunction with this pedal.
Right.
And the Ray G did some cool things on records that, you know. But yeah, this is the thing that's still on my board, obviously. The other ones are like in a drawer. Not because they sound bad, just because I'm using some different things.
Yeah.
But
what about?
Yeah, go ahead.
What about kind of mid-gain overdrives?
I mean, historically, there's just so many that I've really enjoyed. I mean, I think it needs to go back to like, I also really loved the Minotone Blue Collar.
Yeah.
Like, I had that pedal for years, and I had the hand-wired versions. I had the first of the PCBs. I had the PCBs once they changed the graphics. I mean, I had every version of that pedal. I mean, I got, like, my dad had a subscription to Vintage Guitar Magazine. So in the 90s, like, all of these, like, what was that company? Maybe it was called Love Tone.
Mm-hmm.
They were out of the UK.
Yep, the really giant ones.
Uh-huh. So, and then, you know, I found out about, you know, one of the California pedal makers who offered different years of fuzzes and had a drive and had some stuff. And I think he ended up trying to remake a CE1. And I had some of that stuff in the 90s. Let's see, Crowther Audio and... Oh, there we go. That's the Brian Mena.
Is this the one that you had? It was this one?
Well, that's the 4-knob, and I had that one, and then there was a 3-knob.
All right, let's look at that. 3-knob.
But I think the 4-knob was my favorite.
Collar Overdrive. Four-knob.
Maybe that was it. Maybe it was 4 knobs in a row. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I thought there was a 3-knob.
And then you said the Crowther with the hot cake?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of people sleep on this pedal now.
Well, I mean, dude, I'm talking about this is over 20 years ago.
Right. No, this is like definitely
and then there was
one
like
that people are sleeping
Allstone
on.
Electronics, and there were all these other companies back then. But there was an ad that came out in Vintage Guitar that just like caught my eye. And I was really into Stevie Ray Vaughan, which means as a teenager, like a 9th, 10th grade teenager, I was really into Kenny Wayne Shepherd because I couldn't go see Stevie Ray Vaughan play, but I could go see Kenny Wayne Shepherd play, and he sounded similar.
Yeah.
You know, and he was using this pedal, this big gold pedal, and this was before Instagram. Like, you just had to find out about stuff, like sneak up to the front and like try and get your head over the stage. And he had some big gold pedal, and I just needed to know what his overdrive was. And I remember running across this ad in Vintage Guitar, and I saw that big gold pedal. And it was the Klon Centaur. And I remember I was in 10th grade, and there wasn't a lot of information about what it did. I think it just said like professional overdrive.
Yeah.
And clearly I had been playing around with amateur overdrives, and I needed to step it up. So this was back in the day when you could call people. So I think it just had his address and his phone number. So I made a long distance phone call. I think I'd used like the 220 and made a long distance phone call.
Yeah.
And this guy answered the phone, and he talked to me for like 2 hours. And that was Bill. And man, I used to call him every few weeks of just, okay, so what would this pedal sound like if I got this kind of amp? And all the questions that like a teenager, I was into tone, and he would answer. He's like, well, if you change your speakers to this, then it would probably have more of this kind of effect. And he was so thoughtful. At the time, there was a very long wait list, like in excess of 9 months. And I think it was like $270 or something, which was a lot for a pedal back then. And I wanted one so bad.
So what year would you say this was?
This was 1998. I woke up Christmas morning, and there was a freaking Klon Centaur sitting under the Christmas tree that my dad had inscribed on the back plate. Like, maybe like, I love you, or Merry Christmas, love Daddy. I can't remember what it was inscribed, but it was inscribed in there. And apparently he had called Bill at the end of November. And Bill's like, sorry, man, I'm not making any more this year. There's a 9-month wait list. You pay me and I'll get you on the list. And then my dad mentioned his son. And then this guy was like, in Carolina. And he like realized that was my dad calling. And he's like, I'll send you one tomorrow. So it was like a super solid move, man. And this was back in those days of pedals. And it's just, through some stupid choices in my early 20s, sold that pedal for like $100. So somebody out there has a Klon Centaur, gold horsey, that has some sort of etched inscription in the back plate that says something about son, daddy. Like, somebody's got it. And
oh man,
I would just like to have a picture of it if they happen to watch your podcast and they own that pedal. They would have bought it from, well, depending on who owns it and how many times it's been flipped over. It came from Carolina to Virginia, and but yeah, I'd like to find it again one day. But that was like my, those pedals, Minotone, Crowther, they're all worth mentioning, and they sounded really good and they were unique. So when we get into like recent years pedals, there's so many that I can't distinguish them one from the other. Like, if you're just playing it through, you take one pedal and you put it through 3 different amps, and you put me in a room and I'm blindly supposed to tell you what it is, I'm going to be unable to do that. But back then, pedals were unique. They did not all sound the same to me. And I could tell you this was this pedal, this was this pedal. So I think for my ears, I go for things that have unique sounds. So mid-range pedals were like, I really liked the Providence stuff. I really liked, Barber had some good stuff, man.
The burn unit was cool.
Yeah, when the Shure stuff came out, like, I really enjoyed the Sheba Drive. I love the Minotone stuff. I liked Exotic. When like I first heard the AC booster, I really liked it, man.
Yeah.
But in those years, the Minotone was probably my favorite. Like, I'm gonna turn this pedal on when it's time to like burn a little bit.
What would you say now are sort of your go-to overdrives other than just the Jan Ray?
Yeah, I mean, I've had your stuff on my board for a while. I mean, I need to mention Brad Jetter
Yeah.
because Brad Jetter makes incredible pedals, like the GS 124. I mean, he had older stuff too that like I was just always had Jetter pedals on my board. He had a gold standard 45-100. He had like he had a red, just different colors. And man, Brad Jetter, and he was a friend, man, just like you are. Like Brad's my friend. I'd see him a lot. We'd hang out. He'd come into the shop. But that GS 124 is just a fantastic pedal. And
Yeah.
it would 100% be on my board still. I broke it. But I'd had it for years, man. Like, but yeah, those pedals are great.
Yeah, I was actually talking about the other day with David Grissom, and he's got his signature pedal. But I think Brad now only sells direct. I don't know if that's right or not.
Well, man, that's probably it's worth buying. They sound so good. Brad is an incredible guy, and he's got those kind of ears where like if he told me I need to change whatever, I'd consider it because
Yeah.
I trust him,
Yeah, and
But
I remember his pedals being all really reasonable too, based on. I'm going to a store now, but and Brad's also a really great guitar player.
Oh God, yeah. He's got like the Eric Johnson. I've never heard anybody else that really has the Eric Johnson touch. Like Brad has I don't have it. Brad can make his notes feel like Eric Johnson's notes feel, which is a feat, Is that a helium? Yeah. That's a killer pedal too, man. All of these are great.
It's kind of unbelievable that they're so little money.
Well,
these are really inexpensive for how good they are. I didn't realize they were this inexpensive. What's the helium? Do you know what this is?
yeah, so it's a light overdrive. It's going to be in the same vein as so I mean Brad's a huge Larry Carlton, huge Robin Ford. I mean, he's a fan of all of these players, and he loves the Dumble tones, and he loves the classic Fender and classic Marshall tones. So his pedals are based around that. And dude, Brad built amps too. Like Bedrock was his company. And then Brad always had some amps at his house that he just put together that were like the best sounding amps I've ever heard. Like the best Marshall sound I've ever experienced. He had a aluminum panel 50 watt. I think it was like a Tremolo 50.
Yeah.
And an 810 cab. And I remember going over to Brad's house one day and taking one of his like 50s or 60s Les Pauls and just playing G chords in front of that amp, and just like you feel the wind. It's just whoo. So Brad loved those tones, so he built pedals that like felt like that. So I think the helium was a lighter overdrive pedal, but it could give you that very musical pronounced tone. And I'll tell you this, because we sold a lot of them at Boutique Guitar Exchange back in the Missy days. If you could play, you loved his pedals.
Yeah.
If you couldn't play, you probably had a difficult time with some of his pedals. Because he built his pedals to be high reward, but they are high risk. If you flub a note, there's no hiding it. But if you nail it, like the pedals were so articulate and musical that like it did things for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So other than that, man, I remember I was still primarily like, I had a Jan Ray. I had some secondary type pedal where I would just need to like look at pictures of my boards back then to know what I was using. I mean, I know I had a Sheba Drive for a while. I know I had like all sorts of stuff, but I was always rotating through what my Dumble sound was. So, I mean, there was like the Providence had a pedal and it was red.
The SOV.
Yeah. And I feel like there was 3 or 4 different SOVs I got, like from different different prices and different.
Yeah.
Is that right? Was
Well, they
there
had like
multiple
the
SOVs?
SOV one was really big, so you probably didn't have that one because it had an AC cord. And the SOV two was like a regular kind of MXR Phase 90. And then I think that they're up to another one now. And then Free the Tone came
That
out with
was
their
it.
version.
They had some, because I remember there was like some $150 ones, and then there was some more $100 ones.
Yeah.
But I had those. I had oh man, there was like a Zen Drive, Dumb Kudos, which that's a pedal, man. Derek had one of those and
Yeah.
turned me on to it. But there was always like that, like going for that type of tone. And I remember when I was at your house, this was when you lived in where you had the kitchen view over the water.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We
And I
were living
remember
in Point Richmond. Yeah.
you had this light blue pedal.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember playing it and just being like, oh boy, like this is doing the thing. Like,
Yeah.
this is really doing it right now. And I mean, I know I was after you for years. Like, give me that pedal. Nope, I don't want that. I want that pedal, which lasted until like, I think I have that pedal now. Like, that's the one on my board, right?
Yeah. Just put it in a different enclosure.
Color.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, these Ultraphonics are great. And I've got both of them. I've got the regular Ultra, and then I've got the
EL34 voiced one, the HRM.
Yeah, the SL34, which is this coffee I'm drinking. It's a very nice mid, like. But yeah, those two Ultraphonics, they work great. And because of, I like all my pedals to play with each other well.
Yeah.
So each of them are going to have to sound good through my Jan Ray. And if it doesn't sound good through my Jan Ray, it's not going to stay on my board. But
what about Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just the Ultraphonics and then the Ultraphonics HRM. They both do different things. I use them for different functions. They stack well with each other. They stack well with the Jan Ray. They stack well with the boost. They stack well with the steel string. And that's currently like the bottom row of my board. And I have functions for all of them, which is important to me.
What about modulation stuff? What do you like in these days?
When I got out of the retail side of things in 2014, I never wanted to read about another pedal. I never wanted to have to describe something to anybody again. I wanted someone else to do what I had been doing and just give me what I want. Which is kind of like when you put me on this GFI. It's like, I don't care what it does. Just give it to me.
Yeah.
Is it easy to use? Okay, I'll give it to me. So I think just being honest, what I like is to not have to like figure anything else out. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy programming. I don't enjoy sitting around and like exploring. I don't want new sounds. I like the sounds that I grew up with. I'm just at that place in life where like, those are the sounds I like. Now I'm going to do some different stuff with them. I'm going to use them in different places, but I'm not trying to reinvent a wheel.
Yeah.
I like the way the wheels looked when I grew up. So, I've had this Strymon Big Sky on my board for a really long time. Like, there's so many records that have been done. I mean, they're still in there. Like, I can go to series of banks that are like this guy's record or this girl's record, or
right.
It's, like I sold my my timeline to my friend Louie, and he wanted to use it for his keyboard. But I had a lot of guitar players that wanted to buy my timeline because they wanted my presets from this specific album.
Right.
I was like, sorry, dude. Like, you just need to figure it out and come up with yours and not do mine. But I still have the Big Sky. and I still have this GFI Specular Tempest.
Yeah.
And I like that the Specular Tempest has like
This guy.
yeah. There's some stuff about it that I don't dig, like as far as layout but I like the way it sounds. I like the way that it's not as clean sounding as the Strymon. It's a little dirtier,
Yeah.
which to me, it just kind of works a little better for me.
Tell you
Moving
though-
around on it is not as convenient at all.
Yeah.
Like you can go forward, but you can't go backward. And I really
Yeah.
liked that about the timeline for these live sets where I don't want a MIDI controller. Like I don't want more stuff on my board. But the sound is really, really good. And it's got a reverb in it, but I haven't taken the Big Sky off and replaced it with another GFI just because I don't really want to buy one. And I have the Big Sky and it works. I know how to use it. And I never thought I'd get to that place of like being one of those guys. Cause I was telling you, me and Eddie and Derek, we were those people that if there's something better, we were going to have it. Like if this battery really does, if we notice a difference, we're getting them.
Yeah.
And now I'm just kind of at that place of it's just ease of use. Like right now, I don't have to change anything. I know how this pedal works. I know how to be comfortable with it on any gig. And yeah, man, I'm just there now.
Yeah.
I have more fun talking to people at the shows. I have more fun setting up and tearing down quickly or like sound checking quickly because it's already kind of there.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So what about like sleeper pieces of gear? I mean, I guess you could say that I think Jetter has kind of been under the radar unless you're like really hip to the boutique stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you say is like, who's been making some stuff or who has made some stuff that you think is like people aren't hip to it, but they should be? This could be guitars, this could be amps, this could be guitar pedals.
Blue Chip Picks.
Blue Chip Picks.
Yeah, this thing right here. Like, a guy named Andy Wood turned me on to him. I was using Red Bear picks. And Red Bear sounded really good, but they would warp in my hand. I was always having to like file them down. He turned me on to these Blue Chip picks. And they kind of make a shape that I was requesting a specific thing for a long time. And then they just started releasing it as a shape. And the shape is now called the TDJ.
All right. And these are just under the flat picks,
Yeah.
I presume.
And you'll see TDJ.
Okay, let's see. TDJ.
Maybe it's still a custom option. I don't know.
All this TDJ stuff. Okay, so CTD. Yeah, I don't see the J.
Really? That's awesome.
Is it just because it's like the shape of like a jazz pick or what?
No, it's the TD pick with a jazz tip.
Got it.
And I've got some around here somewhere. But yeah, the TDJ. Like if you hit them up and tell them you want a TDJ, or you tell them you want the pick I use, they'll send it to you.
Yeah. So how do you not lose these picks? Because I feel like I lose picks all the time.
Yeah, because you don't pay that much for picks. Like how many $50 bills do you like misplace regularly?
This is like the expensive sunglasses sort of thing. Like I just buy gas station sunglasses because I lose them all the time. But then,
when you stop losing them, like you spend more on it, and it's like, no, where's those things at? Like those are my sunglasses. Yeah, I mean, I had the same kind of thing of like picks pick. Just I'll buy these by the hundreds, but then I got into like, because I mean, I did grow up in a bluegrass state, and these bluegrassers were all about tortoiseshell, and tortoiseshell 100% sounded different. And once I started getting encouraged to try it on electric, because I do have tortoiseshell, like it sounds way different. And I started realizing that, this blue chip sounds the closest to tortoiseshell of anything I've ever tried. And I tried all the different ones. And it feels different. It allows me to play comfortably. There's things that it does that other picks will not do for me. And everybody's kind of got a thing. I mean, dude, I think Landau was using those Dunlop nylons, like the gray ones. And he sounded great, but that's not me. Yeah. I like these blue chips. I think I've never turned somebody on to them to where they end up saying, oh, that's bad. I don't like this as much. Most people are like, oh man, like I really see what it does now. Yeah. Like Hunter, he was on them for a while. I put this dude, well, it's just a lot of people have like turned to them. I think it allows you to play cleaner. It's more responsive. And I think it actually produces a cleaner note. You hear more note than you do pick. Yeah. And there's still times like on acoustic tracks or something where I want a big like slinky pick sound. And I'll use one of these like yellow Dunlops for that. But if you just want me to play for you, I'm going to be using a blue chip pick. I think it's the cheapest way to upgrade your tone. Yeah. Another company, and man, I think it could have been maybe Clay Cook, Uncle Clay.
Yeah.
Or it was him, or maybe I sold an ML100. Nope. A guy had an ML100 and he traded it for oh man, what's the name of those amps? Dude, what's the name of the amps? They were made out of the Sur.
The custom
factory.
audio amplifiers.
No. It was a guy who came in and started working with John.
Jim Kelly.
Yep. That was it. I had a Jim Kelly, and this guy had an ML100, and he wanted to switch. So we switched. And this guy, it was Steve Warner's son.
Okay.
And I just remember, I didn't know who he was. He walked in, and hey, can I play some stuff? Sure, go ahead. And he starts playing, and I'm like, holy crap, who is this guy? Like, this is incredible playing. And it was Steve Warner's son. And, he talked about having all this different gear, and we ended up doing the amp switch. And I think in just, like, watching him, I found out about this thing called the Brown Box.
Oh, yeah, the voltage.
And... Brown box, and then Clay had one, and I started looking into it, and I remember calling the guy who makes brown boxes and talking to him about what I was looking for, and man, it makes a huge difference if you're playing any kind of vintage amp or newer amp that's made similar to vintage amps. Vintage amps were not designed for 120. So when you play them at 120, they don't feel like they were supposed to feel.
Yeah, for people that don't know about that, when the voltage has risen over time in the 60s, it was lower than 120. And so the challenge though with I appreciate the brown box. The challenge is that you have to know your input voltage in order to compensate correctly.
Right.
Which is, I guess does the brown box tell you what your input voltage is into it?
It does. So it is not a variac. It there's no blowing up your amp. It actually shows you everything that's happening. So it will read what the wall is. And this is the thing I found out. I was playing a lot of places that had like 122, 124, 126. And it allows you to compensate for different things and percentages. Yeah. And the model I have, it shows you what it was, what it is. It shows you both ends of it.
Yeah.
So the risk of damage I think is relatively low. Proof is I've used it for years, in many different scenarios with different amplifiers, and I think it extends the life of my tubes, and I haven't had any damaged amplifiers. But I think that piece of gear, it is a noticeable difference in the way your gear feels.
Yeah.
Like it feels like you've just changed something dramatic. Like, oh man, I just retubed my amps. Like it's a substantial difference for the better, like a positive difference.
Yeah.
Those two things are like sleeper pieces of gear. I would have said the Mirage is a sleeper piece. You know, a lot of people don't know about it.
A lot of people don't know about that compressor.
I would have said the Minotone Blue Collar, same thing. A lot of people don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Dude, you know, I don't think it's really sleeper, but I would say we're out of the age of a lot of people experiencing it regularly, and that would be tone tubby speakers.
Okay. The hemp cones.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've got Scumbacks. I've got, what were they called? Sugar cones. And was it called Schultz Audio or Schultz Audio or Schultz Audio?
For what, Tom Schultz, like the guy that did the Rockman stuff?
Yeah, maybe. There was like a very high-end speaker.
Okay.
Schultz Audio or Schultz Audio or something, and
Okay.
Sugar cones. I mean, dude, I was just into like all these different speaker combinations. Like how else can we make a G12 65? You know,
Right.
and I think the Scumbacks were actually. I've got a H75 in one of my cabs, and it's pretty good. But tone tubbies,
those are
man,
the hit for a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got that H75, and then I've got an actual G1265H that's like an incredible speaker. And that's my like that era of music sound cab. If I'm going for those tones that the self-indulgent ones I really like, they're going to happen in that cab. But these tone tubby speakers, they're pretty neat, man. And I've got several of them. I would say those are sleeper pieces of gear. Yeah.
Yeah. I think those are good suggestions because most of the time when I talk with people, they primarily restrict it to pedals and stuff like that. I think those are actually good sort of behind the scenes recommendations that maybe somebody wouldn't think of initially as like a first thing that they would consider.
EWS. I think that's what it called. EWS. Their power, their IEC cable. Like if you're playing tube amps, that's going to make a big difference in the way your amp sounds. That's a sleeper piece of gear. Like, I was mind blown and Daniel Klein from Port City actually turned me on to it, and we tested it against every other IEC. We had companies sending us IECs just so we could do shootouts, and this is again like over a decade ago. And those EWS IECs, huge.
EWS, the pedal company?
Nah, man, they made like cables and stuff for like home audio and studios, and pretty sure it's EWS, man.
Let's see. I'm looking. I don't see.
They made IECs.
What's that?
They made IEC cables.
Yeah, I'm looking for EWS IEC power cables. I don't see anything that's coming up, but
Look
I
up
can ask
music.
Daniel.
Look up Music Cord Pro.
Music Cord Pro. Okay. I see Music Cord Pro. I see that.
Is it an IEC?
It's an IEC.
Who makes it?
What's that?
What company's on it?
ESP, Essential Sound Products.
Essential Sound Products. That was it.
Yeah.
They didn't make cool guitars that loved matte black as finish.
They also make. It looks like they also make power strips.
I didn't know that. I mean, again, I haven't had to replace this stuff in over a decade.
Here's what they got.
Yeah, man, that thing right there makes such a big difference in the way my amp sounds. Ooh.
Yeah, here's the power strip.
That's cool.
Huh.
And dude, all of this stuff, like, it's not going to get you a gig. It's not going to get you another session. It's just going to make you comfortable. Like, you're going to enjoy it. It's going to feel better. You're going to feel better knowing you have it running. For me, that's what it always was. It's just, I enjoyed it more.
Yeah.
And if I'm not enjoying it, why am I doing it? You know?
Yeah.
Like, there's been some producers and people I've worked for over the years where, like, they keep asking me to do stuff so far away from what I enjoy that I'm not going to work for them anymore. Like, I don't want to have the sound of, like, some small lunchbox amps from the 50s about to explode that's been mic'd by this and played through a speaker, which was remic'd and sent through a piano, and we mic'd I don't want that. So hire somebody different. Like, I want to sound like, hey, man, give me the tones from, like, Human Nature.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now we're talking. That's something I'm really going to enjoy doing. Like,
yeah.
Hey, man, give me the sound from, like, a Joe Sample record.
Spellbound.
Yeah, like, okay, now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Hey, give me those Seal kind of vibes.
Yeah.
Like, all right, yeah, I got Richard Marx. Like,
you want some Kiss from a Rose?
Oh man, do I ever?
Is there any guitar in Kiss from a Rose?
There is when I play it. There's a lot of solos too.
Seal's one of those guys where nobody really sounds like him
at all.
And it's such a bummer. I mean, I'm saying this personally. People may prefer Seal now as a crooner, but Seal 1 and Seal
Landau
2 were so good.
Brian Blade, Tony Levin.
Now, that was the live band, but I don't think that those guys are on the record.
Nah, but that live band is like, that's the sauce.
Yeah. And I'd say an overlooked Seal record is the one where he's, it's the one after Seal 2, called, what's it called? Human Beings. You remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a silhouette of him. Well, I guess they're all silhouettes of him, aren't they? At least the early ones. I was like looking at the old Klon Centaur website in 2003. This is what it looked like, Ben.
Yeah, dude.
The old days when you go to a Klon Centaur, you go to buy a Klon Centaur, you can call them up.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I remember that picture. That was the picture in their ad.
It looked just like yours. This is crazy. And I think they were $250, I think, right?
No, I think it was a little more than that. I think it was like $269.
Yeah, so Seal 2, this is the one. Now, Jeff Beck, I think, was on some of these.
Oh, man. We haven't even talked about him.
It's funny, it doesn't give any credits on this one.
Go to all credits.
Oh, actually, there's a few here. I see. His string arrangements.
You can look it up on like All Music or something. It'll probably have the
Let's go to all credits. I'm curious. I don't think Landau played on the record though. Seal. All right, Seal. And it's this one. All right.
No, I've got that same, when you redid this picture for the first, for the volume pedal, I've still got that picture of you like that around here somewhere.
There's a picture of me like this?
Yeah, you know, from when you first released the volume pedal? That was your ad?
That was my ad, yeah.
It's
Joni
just less,
Mitchell's
it's
on
less
this one.
silhouetted. It's just
Less
like
silhouetted.
a clear picture of you.
Yeah. Well, you have my permission to post. Pino Palladino played bass.
Mm.
Jeff Beck is on some song. We don't know what. Yeah, I don't see any other guitar listed except for Jeff Beck.
Huh.
But Pino Palladino is definitely on there. How about that?
Nice.
And Joni Mitchell. I mean, Seal plays guitar too, but he's not like he's no Jeff Beck. But yeah, that's a great album. But yeah, man, I feel like we covered a lot today. We've been already talking for almost 2 hours.
Almost 3,000 bars of 120.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a nice little Pro Tool session for you.
What are you? Did we miss anything?
I don't think we missed anything. I think that the conversation was organic. It was real, and we covered the things in whatever order we decided to do. You know, that's the best we can ask for. And if we didn't cover enough, there could always be an episode 2.
OG Smitten.
The ice cream shop.
Yeah, the OG one, like
Yeah.
the real chocolate one.
Yeah.
That's like favorite piece of gear.
Yeah. I'm sure that this fad has to exist in other places. But what Ben's talking about is there's this ice cream shop here in the Bay Area. Actually, I think they're in LA now too. Let me see if I can.
But the last time I was there, it didn't taste the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll give people we're going to get into the ice cream here. So this is Smitten Ice Cream. And they do this thing where they use liquid nitrogen to freeze their. Let's see if they have any. They must have some sort of photo or something showing this stuff. Well, here's the machine here. You can see the woman who started it, you know, before it was a real company, was doing liquid nitrogen out of her radio flyer wagon at farmers markets. But it is one of the best ice creams for a time that we ever had. But they, you know, I think they got bought by a larger company or something like that, and they changed their ingredients. And so instead of using this chocolate from a company in Berkeley called Cho, it's spelled TCHO, they started just using, like, I don't know, I think it went from Cho to Ganache, and the taste changed and wasn't as good. But those were the days.
But that was like sleeper gear.
That was like sleeper gear. You go and have some smitten ice cream, and then just go on your session and just have that dairy bomb in your gut. Just
yeah, dude. Like the Songbird demo.
Did we have ice cream before we went to that?
Yeah, probably like ice cream and cheese.
Yeah, it was just all
like
dairy.
Both dairies.
Yeah.
Well, man, thanks for having me on. Thanks for listening to my little stories about living in Atlanta and
I think this is all cool. You know, this is like everybody has this unique gear journey, this way that they got to where they are, and the stuff that they've tried and the recommendations. I really appreciate the pick and the brown box and like the behind the scenes stuff. Again, like usually that's not where people go with this, and so I appreciate that it was like things that were not so obvious, like, you know, things that you would think about on that stuff. So thank you for those recommendations, and thank you for talking with me.
Oh yeah, dude. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. See you later,
right.
Ben.
Bye.
That was a great convo, catching up with my buddy Ben. What a amazing player. He's just so underrated, so humble. You know, the fact that he doesn't even want to take solos anymore, it's just like, man, I love his solos. I hope he doesn't completely give it up, because he has such a voice on the guitar. I highly recommend that you check him out. He's got some really great content. If you listen to any of the latest Tasha Cobbs records, you can hear him on there. Really, really kills it, does a great job. I just love his approach, his playing. If I could play like any guitar player, I think it might be Ben Forehand. So thank you, Ben, for that. I also want to thank everybody behind the scenes that makes this podcast possible. Kevin Walt and Blue Microphones provide all the Yeti microphones, the boom arms, the pop filters, everything that we need to sound good on this podcast. I also want to thank Hunter Harrison for mixing and editing, and Mason Bahia for co-producing, and Tim Marco for all of the music. Until next time, I'm Mason Marangella, the Rig Doctor.